Welcome back to this week's episode of Let Me Drive. We've got some interesting topics, so let's get started. First one, the C8 Corvette is finally getting a manual. I'm calling it now. This isn't really necessarily happening, but we're putting some dots together. So Tremec has just introduced a manual transmission that suspiciously lines up with a lot of C8 Corvette things. And so it lines up with the mounting points. It has a similar RPM limit as the current C8. And so we're putting some signs together and putting some dots together, and I think it's probably not a coincidence. So not to mention, this is the first Corvette in the history of Corvettes that has not come with a manual option. And so this is the 8th one in the line, and again, no manual option. All the other ones have had a manual option, but they are continuing to create iterations. So since 2020, they've had a few iterations of the new Corvette, including kind of a hybrid model. They just came out with the monstrous ZR1, and that is got 1,064 horsepower. So I think they're tweaking it, they're making it better, they're offering new things. And how natural would it be to offer a manual transmission in any of their sports cars? And so for those of you that have seen some of my other videos, and there aren't many of you because I currently have 4 subscribers, but you have seen that I had a 2023 C8 Corvette, and it was quite an incredible car. I ended up selling it not too far after getting it because it just wasn't my thing. I mean, seriously, I just recently updated the tape holding my rear windshield vinyl together, so that's more in line with my car experience. So anyway, let's assume that this is actually happening. Let's assume that this is particularly made for the Corvette or a similar vehicle. Why is it important? Why do we even want a manual potentially as an offering? So up until the mid-90s approximately, manual cars were actually faster than automatic cars because it took an automatic car a little bit of time to actually change gears. So back then it was not only cooler to have a manual car, but it was also faster. So not only that, but it was, you would actually get like specific car times that were split between manual and automatic versions. So the manual would have a different performance figure. So 0-60 figure manual, and they'd also talk about the performance figure for an automatic. So however, to some car folks, it's still that since then it's changed. Automatic transmissions have gotten a lot faster. The computers in cars have gotten a lot better, and it's now measured in like milliseconds, way faster than any human could possibly change gears. But to some car folks, it's still a lot more fun to have a manual car because you feel like you're doing stuff rather than pointing and going. And so personally, I really love it. I don't necessarily care that it's a slower experience because, like, where am I going? Like I'm in these cars because I enjoy driving them. So the other challenge that Corvette might face here is just kind of like their setup, right? If you're familiar with the C8 Corvette, it's kind of set up in a cockpit style fashion, and they have that controversial row of or wall of buttons on the right side of the center console. So kind of putting a stick shift there would be adding more noise to an already noisy space, but they have designers for these sorts of things, and they can kind of figure out what that would look like and redesign the buttons in a better spot or whatever the case is. But I think it would be a really cool thing if the C8 Corvette got a manual transmission and just added to the options that are available in their cars today. It's a great vehicle. I had an awesome experience in it. Adding a manual to it somehow that fits within the rest of the car would be a really cool offering by Corvette. Next topic. So there's a new EV Toyota Corolla coming out, and I think I can see the future. So just last week, I talked about how GM is going to introduce a family of affordable EVs in addition to introducing the Chevy Bolt. I was making the point that all the main manufacturers kind of need to get on board here and do something similar, and said that the Toyotas of the world should introduce an EV Corolla or equivalent. And lo and behold, like the next day, Toyota talks about a new EV Corolla concept, and so needless to say, one of my 4 subscribers is Toyota themselves. But anyway, I'm a huge fan of the Corolla, and I've had 2 myself. They've never been like an incredible car in terms of performance or anything like that, but they have a special place in the market between practical, affordable, and reliable. And if this thing comes out looking anything like this concept that they introduced, then you can probably add good looking to that list of things as well. Now, next topic is Scout Motors. So Scout Motors has 130,000 reservations, and nearly all want the hybrid option. So Scout was an older car brand. It was called the International Harvester Scout. Rolls right off the tongue, right? Anyway, it was a popular off-roader back in the 60s and 70s, and leading all the way up to 1980. This type of vehicle, or this class of vehicle, and kind of the shape of this vehicle, later introduced or influenced the older Broncos and the Blazers and the Jeep Cherokees of the world. So it's been reintroduced again. Actually, back in 2022, they're talking about bringing it back. But it's officially owned by VW, but are kind of doing their own thing while using VW resources, and just kind of like having a backing from a from a company that has actual resources. So we're going to come out with 2 vehicles in 2027. The Terra, which is the truck offering, and the Traveler, which is the SUV offering. They sold 130,000 reservations, most of which are opting for the hybrid option, which is like it's basically an EV but with a gas generator to charge the batteries versus a typical internal combustion engine hybrid. So it's using a gas engine to charge the electric component of the vehicle. The market seems to be moving more and more towards SUVs and trucks anyway, so a new offering here will be welcomed by the market. Pricing seems to be around the $60K American mark, but we'll see how it plays out by the time it comes out in 2027. That's still, a year and a half easily away, and so just trying to guess the numbers for that will be challenging, at least to guess them accurately. But it looks really cool. It looks like it's got maybe some design influence from the Rivians of the world. It's a little like boxier in shape, but I think it'll be a really good offering with the backing of an actual manufacturer that's massive and has some scale. That foundation could be really helpful in getting them off the ground, as long as Volkswagen doesn't influence the mistakes that they've made themselves in the past. I talked about the ID Buzz last week or maybe the week before, and kind of how it came out way too expensive, and now even after massive price drops, people still don't necessarily want it at the pace or the volume that I assume Volkswagen would want. Next, Honda has talked about how they're going to start to consider, quote unquote, EVs that cost less than $30,000. So for whatever reason, some of the main Japanese automakers have so far been hesitant to jump into the EV world of cars. They've preferred hybrid offerings, and those hybrid offerings have done quite well for them. The Toyota RAV4 is like, the hybrid option is like forever not available or sold out or on a waiting list. So obviously the hybrid style of car has done well for some of these major manufacturers. So anyway, from an electric perspective, Toyota only has the BZ SUV, as the electric option, and Honda only has the Prologue as an SUV as well, as their electric offering. Now, Mazda had an offering called the MX-30, but it was pretty terrible and got quickly discontinued, at least in my region anyway. And so, obviously, there's a trend here. The Japanese manufacturers just aren't really in that space yet. So, Honda saying they're going to consider EVs under $30,000 is going to be good. But I truly think they need to consider that faster and roll it out faster. The Hondas and Toyotas of the world currently have reliability as a large part of their branding. People buy these cars because they're typically more reliable than their non-Japanese counterparts. But an EV is naturally more reliable than an than internal combustion engine. And so as it pertains to EVs specifically, they may lose that edge as a feature of their brand. And so while GM, Tesla, and numerous other manufacturers are focusing on affordable EVs that will likely be pretty reliable, some of these Japanese manufacturers are a little behind in getting on that trend and need to probably pick up the pace if they don't want to lose out on that component of the market. Finally, a really cool thing coming out of Nissan is Nissan just kind of like rolled out this little van that has it's an EV that has an expandable sunroof or solar panel for the roof, I should say, not a sunroof. So at Japan's 2025 Auto Show, Nissan showed an example of this expandable solar panel roof on one of their vehicles. Economically speaking, this type of thing doesn't add a lot of mileage to the average car, usually because the real estate or the space that the solar panels can use and that would fit on a car isn't really enough to make a useful change. That's why you don't really see EVs with solar panel options. And you have the Fisker used to have like a solar panel top, but really it would just be enough to power the accessories inside the car as opposed to giving the car more mileage. And obviously Fisker has not done well, and they no longer really exist in the format that they used to exist. And so anyway, that's not because of the solar panel, but just because the whole idea of solar panels being enough to put mileage on the car just isn't feasible with today's technology anyway. But even in the example, Nissan says it would add 3,000 kilometers annually. Obviously, that's dependent on a ton of factors like how much sun you have in your region, where you are on the face of the earth, and kind of what your exposure is. But what's cool here is that Nissan is putting in a little bit of like effort and R&D into considering something like this. And it could be really cool to see in the future when solar panel technology gets better or cars get more efficient. At some point, hopefully, those two things will merge, and a car could run on just solar panels only in like sunny regions of the world. There are some concept-ish type cars that have this sort of capability already, but they're purely based on like crazy aerodynamics. They're not super practical. It's like a one-seater with fully covered in solar panels. So they're not really made for the average car market, but we're getting there. Progress in the grand scheme of things is kind of the goal here, but we're also starting to see EVs in larger models. So for example, there's the Sprinter era vans, that size of transport van has some EV offerings, and obviously there's more real estate to put solar panels on top of a vehicle like that. We're also seeing solutions where you can have like a blanket of solar panels that it's not while you're driving, but if you're parked or if you're camping or whatever, you can roll them out in a sunny spot, plug it into your car, and charge your car as well in that way. So we're getting closer to solutions where you can kind of marry those ideas together and get solar panel powered car mileage. We're just not quite there. But as we know in this space, technology advances quickly, and maybe it'll be a matter of time before you don't have to plug in your EV into anything, and you just need to live in a sunny area, and you can get all the mileage you need within that charge. So, anyway, those are the main topics this week. Join me next week for more car topics, and I'll see you when I see you.